Okay.
Hi, my name is Bill Morgan, and I'm here with Dr. Gish, one of the champions of creation. And Dr. Gish, how many debates would you say that you've had for creation versus evolution?
I have 300.
Wow.
300 debates with evolutionists in the United States and in other countries as well.
Well, I know you had a debate at the University of Oregon. I met one of the people who attended it, and he said one of the main reasons he sought out Jesus was your debate. His name is Joel Jones, University of Oregon, so that's at least one person I know.
Well, you know, I've never knew this all those years. I certainly remember having those two debates. There was, and two of the universities had me come and speak. And I didn't, of course, I didn't meet him and so forth and so on. And he had all these years. I didn't know that did, but I know it has changed the lives of many, many people.
Right.
Well, this is interesting. This was exciting to hear about that.
Yeah, he became a school teacher and led a Christian club, and he likes to teach them about creation. And you were the influence. He went there to see you lose the debate, and you changed his mind towards creation. So congratulations.
Well, I always say, God is the one. He knows all of these, and we just go out and we find these facts and so forth and so on. We're merely we are producing things that God has brought them and put them out, and we found them. Found about it, and so.
Where were you born? What was your life like as a child?
I was born in White City, Kansas, little place, and I was, as I said, had a twin brother. I was born 15 minutes before he was, and we became very famous of that place, by the way, because when we were about 5 years old, something like that, I got a can of oil, which along with my twin brother, and we put it along the sidewalk as it goes up to the railroad track, which was just not very far away, but there was a grade there, and we didn't know about this. We forgot about it, but it happened that the next train came by. It hit that oil and couldn't go any farther, and somebody had to get out of the train and get that train going again. Well, they were didn't like that very much, so they sent out the next day or two. They sent their detective go out and find that. That was the easiest job he ever had in his life. He just followed that rail train like oil right to the front door. Of course, when my mother opened the door, he looked at these little twins and just went off and forgot about it. But there was time for years afterwards. People would come up and say, "Oh, are you the twins, Gish twins that stopped the train?" It's happened so many times, relatively recently, too.
Were you raised in a Christian home?
My mother was a Christian, but my father was not. More were Christians than not, yes. And that is why I became a Christian. Because my mother, she got her two little twin boys to Sunday school and so forth and all of that. And she brought us, helped them draw us to the Lord, and returned, to my mother.
What advice would you give to parents for teaching their kids about the Lord?
Well, I I'd say absolutely see that they go to Sunday school and church and with others, Christians and so forth, and keep an eye on things and so forth, and pray for them, and watch them and so forth and so on, and if just do that carefully, it will be a great to do that.
Excellent. What advice do you have for children to grow in the Lord?
Well, I'd say you've got to study the Bible. All that is so important. You study the Bible, learn it, and follow it. And then your pastor and others who are godly, follow them, follow after them, and when you see someone who is off in some other a bad way or something like that way, get away from them. Have nothing to do with them. You stay with the Lord and with those friends who are like you. They love the Lord and serve the Lord. Be a tremendous help.
Okay. So you would say your mother and your pastor were the biggest influence on you becoming a man of God?
Yes, I would say that was certainly true.
And you've seen people that you said could cause trouble, and you tell young people to stay away from them, right? You've run into that.
Absolutely, yes.
At what age would you say you became born again?
I was about 10 or 12 years old when I became a Christian. And in the meantime, I was certainly doing things that a Christian should do. So you might say that I became a Christian even before that.
Interesting. I understand you were in World War II. Could I first ask you if you remember what you were doing when you heard Pearl Harbor got bombed?
When I was in the National Guard, and we were being under training, and actually we were called to service, and we were now in the Army. We were in Arkansas when we were in training. And one day, I'll never forget, that suddenly, over the radio was the news that the Japanese had bombed
Pearl Harbor.
Right then, the war began. And within 7 days, we were on our way to California to help garden it and so forth and so on. We left eventually to fight the Japanese in New Guinea, and some very hard troubles there. And then we went to from New Guinea to the Philippines, and we were in combat there. So we had combat in both places, and we lost a lot of good people. And the Lord took care of me, because it's times when I was quite close to that, very close to the Japanese, and I escaped that sort of thing. In that, I was on one of the ships on its way to the Philippines, one morning I went up on the deck, and I thought something might happen. Well, something did happen. Two airplanes, Japanese planes, showed up, and one of them dropped 2 bombs at one of the other ships. And he missed it a mile, but he came back firing his machine guns, and he crashed right into it in a ball of flame. and I was there on the deck of our ship, which was okay. And I watched that, I want to put the fire out and take care of it, and kept us going till we got there.
Were you in the infantry? What was your duty in the Army?
Yes, I was in infantry. Yeah, I was a lieutenant, eventually, and a lieutenant. And I did some rather strange things in my day. Had one area where the 35 Japanese tanks dug in. And I went up, snuck up there into almost the mid area. I don't know what in the world I was going up there and doing that. But I did, and I had a thing.
That was in the Philippines?
Yeah, I was in the Philippines for a month. And we were expecting to enter Japan, that we would, because we were told that we were going to go into combat to capture them. And I told my men, none of us are going home. We'll all be, we'll lose our lives. It's terrible. But God had other plans, and we were brought home.
Yeah. You thought everyone would die if you had to invade Japan.
There'd be no question about it. With the men, it was terrible. It would have been terrible. And very few would ever have gone home.
Yes. My dad was at Clark Airfield when the atomic bomb was dropped. He said there was so much equipment on the Philippines, he thought it was going to sink. Tanks and jeeps and trucks. Was it difficult being a Christian in the Army?
No, I would not say it was. Of course, there were many Christians there, and there were many who were not. So, the thing to me, I know we had one of our men. He was a rough guy and so forth and so on. But one night we got bombed, and the next morning he said, "Lieutenant," he says, I'll admit it, I was praying last night.
That's great. You said, the barman, I think he carried the Browning automatic rifle?
Yeah.
Okay, so after the war, you eventually became a biochemist.
That's right.
What's the story there?
Well, my parents had moved to L.A. in the meantime when I was in the Army, and so I stayed there, and I wanted to go into chemistry, biochemistry. That was my aim. So of course I went to UCLA, and then when I graduated, I decided to go on into becoming a
PhD?
PhD. Yes, that was a surprise that someone said you should do this. You should go right on to the PhD. And that was a shock to me, but I did. I had a wife and 2 children at that time, little babies. And I went there at at UCLA. I'm sorry, it was in Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. And I did work my way through to my PhD, and I left Berkeley then, went to New York City.
After World War II, you said you decided you wanted to follow or study biochemistry. Was that a brand new field at the time?
No, it wasn't brand new at all, but it was one of the, coming up to be one of the most important ones. So, and I loved chemistry. That was that was what I had tended to be, and so I did. I put my work out to become a biochemist, and that's when I did win my PhD there at the University in Berkeley.
Is it hard to get into Berkeley? Is it competitive?
Well, it depends on how your grade was. And I had no problem with my grade.
Good. And at Berkeley, you were a husband, father, worked, and earned a PhD?
That's right.
Wow. It's amazing.
Even for a while, I took a job driving
ambulance.
Ambulance.
Wow.
An ambulance at the Oakland area.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Driving that at night and doing my job where I'm working for my PhD. I put the two together.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Then you went to Cornell?
No, it was toward it's Cornell University Medical College, which is located in New York City.
Oh, okay.
In New York City, under a different professor. He won the Nobel Prize when I was working under him.
Wow.
With two others. The three of us were working in it. And we got to the point where it says he sure wanted to win that because he knew he was right on the edge. And we went to work and we did what he needed. And it was very helpful to give him the PhD. I mean the
Nobel Prize?
Yes.
What was the work that you were doing that won the Nobel Prize?
Well, there was a particular, I wish I could just describe it, of what it was being, it had been located, it was known, and they had located it and everything, but now they wanted to finish it to know that it was exactly what it was said it was. It was exactly what was put, and it was known to be exactly what this thing was said to be. He had been working on that for about 30 years.
Wow.
And they found what it was and this and that, and they had others that he had people working under him for about 30 years. And we came in at the very back where it would take the final place to show really this is the thing that is said to be. It is definitely, we had to prove that by make a copy of it. That's what we did. We made a copy of it.
Back after you earned when you were at Berkeley, were there a lot of what you would say young earth creation people, or mostly evolutionists back in the 40s and early 50s?
Well, at that time, now, in the universities and so forth, they're largely were evolutionists. And that, well, you don't, usually you don't get in there if you're not an evolutionist. And that's the way it had been and has been. Even today, it's the journals that publish all these articles. If you're a creationist and you work something that's really almost always they just throw it away. They will not publish it for you. They will not help you. And we know that actually we have some very fine people who are very outstanding scientists who have omitted that this was true. That it's just almost impossible to get something that from a creationist rather than someone who has very good, fine work, but they won't let him in.
I knew a structural engineer who went to the dentist and he did a bad job on his teeth. And the structural engineer researched teeth and the best way to repair them. And he determined, he was a Christian, the best way is as close, he said, as close to the original design that God gave us of implants instead of bridges. And his conclusion was we should always try to design teeth repair the way our designer God designed it. He sent it to USC and they said, we love your statistical analysis and your survey, but you got to take out that God reference.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't do it.
He wouldn't do it. He did the honest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So were you a young earth creationist during those days in the 1950s?
Yeah, I had always accepted the fact that God had created all things. God was the creator. I came right on up. I believed that. That's what's already. But I hadn't got into this problem about creation and evolution. I just had all these other things I had done, and I just didn't think about it until when I was at Berkeley and working there. There's a Canadian scientist who published this little book, and somebody gave it to me. And I saw that, and I thought, that is tremendously good work for what he has put in this little book. And it got me fired up. I really had never given any thought like that. This fired me up, and I went to work. And I learned a lot of what he had on the book and others, and I worked from then on. I was working towards creation, definitely. I knew beyond doubt that God had to create what we had.
So that Canadian was planting seeds. He may have no idea the effect he had on your life, correct?
Exactly. It is exactly. And I had I heard about him later and met him, but he was a great, really, and that just helped. It was tremendous. Just got me into this.
It's like when you debate, you have no idea the influence you have. That's really for God's glory. We just plant seeds, correct?
Amen. That's right. Absolutely.
So, how did you go from a biochemist working in the private industry to working for creation?
Well, I met others who were in this area who were looking to set up an organization like this, and I met him, and he was quite a very good scientist himself, and he asked me if
Henry Morris?
What?
Was it Henry Morris?
No, no, it was another fellow that Henry Morris was off somewhere at some place else at that time. He saw that I was a creationist, so he came up to me and asked me if I was interested in joining an organization like creation research. And I said, yes, I would be. And so I joined the organization. I, along with 10 people, there's 10 of us, we met and brought this into being, and it's everything. We got it started, in other words. And Henry Morris was one of those, along with me and others, who started this organization, Creation Research Society.
So there was a gentleman looking for PhDs who believed in creation and brought them together and formed the Creation Research Society.
Yeah, yes, sure did.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And it had to be nerve-wracking for you. You had a nice job to take that leap of faith, correct?
Yeah. Well, yes, it definitely, yes. I left at the time, I was at the Upjohn Company in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I decided that my place was with Henry Morris and their new organization. And so I wrote a letter, and they asked me to come. And so I was with them ever since that time.
Did a lot of prayer go into that before your decision?
Well, yes, of course, always, yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So tell us about your first debate. You were talking about UC Davis off camera. Could you share the UC Davis story with us, please?
Yes, I was there. A professor asked me to come to help with, I would be the creation side, and he had another very well professor to be the evolutionist side, and so there would be students on both sides, and they would go to work and so forth and so on, and then they would be considered by both professors. And the professor, he wrote me a letter, or he called me on the phone, as a matter of fact. Would I come up and take part in this? I would be the one who would support the creation side, and this professor would take the other side. And a very well-known professor. And I said I would, but I asked him to set me up for a lecture over the whole campus that night.
So you were going to give a lecture before the debate?
This is, it didn't happen that way. I gave my lecture, and by the way, the place was packed, absolutely, people standing everywhere, and the professor who brought me, he had to sit on the floor and everything like that, because some girl had written an article in the local newspaper, and the local paper of the university, to come and see this fellow who, what she had seen, and it was in the newspaper of the university, and that got all those people in there. So many people, they were just sitting everywhere. And after my lecture, I really had no idea what would happen, what would happen to somebody like this, and it was a surprise. After I finished my lecture, they clapped and they clapped and they clapped and clapped, until they finally stopped clapping. This professor who's sitting in the audience, he's very famous, but he jumped to his feet and he challenged me. Well, then I challenged to him, and then he challenged to me, then I challenged to him, and so forth and so on. And then the professor jumped up and made some other things, and this went on for quite a while. It was almost midnight.
Wow.
And that's how I got started. As a debate, I had no idea I'd ever do such a thing. And I think what happened, this challenged others to do the same. Others who said, "Oh my goodness sake, why don't we do it? Why don't we set up something like this for creation, to help the creationists?" And I think that's what got started there.
So other campuses would call up the Creation Research Society and say, "We have someone to debate Dr. Gish," correct?
Yes, that's often the case. We have yes.
What amazes me, you did 300 debates, they were on video, your opponent knew what you were going to say, and they still lost.
Well, I tell you, they believed in what they were teaching. You know, actually, they do it. They just accepted it. So much of this was just simply accepted. They didn't really follow what is good science at all. Absolutely.
I was an atheist, and I simply said, evolution is science. I had no reason to call it science. That's all I was ever taught. Then I got some creation facts, and I was angry that I had been lied to. And you, when they clapped for you, it's like, thanks for telling us the truth. That's what I think they were clapping for.
Well, it was true. That's what they were. That's so many of them. It really was a great something for our science.
Did you enjoy the debating, or did you feel it was important, or both?
Well, I was. Let's put it this way. I kind of enjoyed doing it, although it was you know, a lot of hard work and so forth and so on. Now Henry Morris, who went along with me, or I would just say I went along with him, debating for about 30 times. Well, he wanted to get. He didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't. He'd rather write books, and so I took on from then, and that brought me just going from one university to another, or wherever.
Wow.
Throughout the United States. Fact is, I debated in every state except Maine.
Wow.
Yeah, and quite a number of, throughout the world as well, including
Holland.
What?
You said Holland. You had a good debate.
Holland,
right?
and well, I had a debate in
Russia.
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 Yes,
Wow.
my first visit to Russia.
Wow.
I had a debate with another fellow
Nice.
on the radio, on the on their what it said, and it was actually at when John Morris went over after that. They were playing that debate I had there for the third time.
Wow.
Throughout Russia, all over Russia.
Oh.
And so that reached out to.
Wow. Wow. We got to get you a debate in Maine.
I told people, I kept telling people, listen, if you know anybody over there, let me know. And they never did.
I love it. I love it. Now, when you would debate, what would be the 2 or 3 main points you would want to make in defense of creation?
Well, of course, it was the fossil record that would show that it was powerful evidence. And there are other evidence where you could show that what they're thinking did not work, it didn't work, and couldn't work. And there's so much of that evidence, really. And these people, it's incredible what these people do accept. But I tell you, things are getting more different, very poor, very poor for their side. Let me illustrate an example. I have here. By the way, here's a statement by a scientist, and he was not a creationist. I mean, yeah, he wasn't a creationist and so forth and so on, but he said that Darwinism is absolutely wrong. He wasn't a creationist, but he said here, I believe that one day the Darwinian myth will be ranked the greatest deceit in the history of science.
Wow.
Now there's a professor, and he's
Soren.
Soren. He's not he wasn't an American, but this man, look what he says, is one of the greatest deceits in the history of science. And that's what's being taught today. It's a shame. Well, I wanted to...
Well, I once met a smart guy, and I said, do you really believe crows are the result of the process of the theory of evolution? And he said, yes. And I said, well, what about one protein in the cell, or one protein in the crow? Do you think that's the result of the evolution process? And he says, you know, that's a big problem. It's like, well, the crow is more complex than one protein in the crow.
Oh, the origin of the universe. Now, it has been
You want me to read it?
It has been discovered that each of the physical constants that govern the universe is incredibly delicately balanced. If one of these constants is a tiny bit more or a tiny bit less, life could not exist, and or the universe itself could not exist. Now here, we have these physical, the physical constants that are contained in the universe, and they are
the ratios, right?
These physical constants are what is making the universe operate, and they are very small, and they dare not go in one direction wrong, and so forth and so on. Even a little bit. And it says here's by this Heinz Oppenheimer, who is an astrophysicist at the University of Vienna, Austria, said, "I am not a religious person, but I could say that this universe is designed very well for the existence of life."
One thing I always like to tell people is, I'm not religious at all. I believe in truth and seeking truth. People want to label creation as religion. No, creation is true. It's not religious.
Yes. What we're seeing here is in the universe. We know that this is true. That this is contained. The physical constants has these physical constants, and if one is just slightly in the wrong direction, or this or that, or others are saying there, it would destroy the universe. Absolutely. The idea that something blew up and created a universe is absolutely absurd. You take there's 50, 60, 70 of these things and put them just in the right place at the right amount and thinking, and they'll stay right there forever, is absurd. And it just absolutely changes to show the truth that the universe had to be created. And we have so much, if we had time to show, let me describe these things. These are fossils that are found, and there are in a very large array of different kinds of creatures that absolutely no information, no indication that these things evolved or came from anything else. They all appear fully formed. They're, and then the so-called Cambrian rocks. Now these creatures, if evolution were true, there were supposed to be millions and billions of creatures before them that would gradually produce these creatures into these things. That is not what we find. They all appear absolutely and totally, though, with no
transition
evidence that they had come into example from earlier forms. They just suddenly appear, and
so you don't think legs became wings?
no, absolutely not. If I can, let me do just a little bit here, time, with these trilobites. These are just, there are others, many others, but I want to refer to these trilobites. They say, since the lens of the trilobite eyes are composed of inorganic crystalline calcium carbonate, they are preserved and fossilized in the eyes. Thus, scientists were able to study the optics of the trilobite eyes. The scientists, they were astounded to discover that the trilobite had utilized Fermat's principle. I just think of this, that down there and going around, how could these things create something like the Fermat's principle? That is very, very complex.
Could you explain the Fermat's principle to someone like me?
Well, I'm sorry, I'll have to get some expert, who studied these, and I'll come to him later here.
Yeah.
But they were now. So we hear this. We see that they created Fermat's principle. But look at this. They also not only created Fermat's principle, they also created Abbe's sine law. An incredible thing. Think of these things. Now, could these things just happen by chance and so forth? Of course it couldn't. And then we see further, we see this astounded that the trilobites had utilized not only Fermat's principle, Abbe's sine law, but also Snell's law of refraction. Where in the hell in the world did that happen? Just by chance. And then we come to, it goes even further past that. These trilobites created not only Fermat's principle, but also Abbe's sine, so forth, but also Snell's laws of refraction, and so forth. The optics of birefringent crystals. Think that these creatures created, they had to have all of these creatures, all these features, and that had to be come from the outside. Of course, the blind process of evolution would have to invent a complex biochemical process that converts light into electrochemical signals. that's done. And of course, it would also have to invent millions of optic nerves to carry these signals to the brain. And then, of course, it would have to invent a brain to do all of this. Well, why are we, at least, you may not understand too much what's being described here, but it's what to show that it could not have been put into some process by that would create these things. These had to be created. There are scientists who studied these trilobites to a great deal of time was a man named Dr. Levi Seti. And he said this: we have no record of this beginning. In other words, they appear suddenly, completely produced, with nothing preceding and nothing with any possible way of creating these things. As he said, we have no record of the beginning. However, we infer. In other words, we guess, we think. This is what we think, and so forth. He said, we have no record of the beginning. However, we infer that a tremendous evolutionary process must have occurred prior to the first recorded occurrence of trilobites in sedimentary rocks. In fact, trilobites appear suddenly in the fossil record at the very beginning of the Cambrian period. The evolution being 600 million years ago. But, and they had these creatures, there was absolutely no anything could produce these things. And they had, now in other words, they had already reached full degree of development and differentiation. These things suddenly appear complete. There is absolutely no, or nothing has ever indicated that something evolved these things. They suddenly appeared completely produced. And that is the way with other, the fish. The fish, actually, if fish evolved from something lower below, there must be evidence of it. But there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that fish evolved from something farther away. And it would be a tremendous amount, all kinds of fish appear, and there's no indication that they had been produced. I'd say nothing like that is it. And we could
100% fish in the fossil record.
Absolutely.
100% trilobite.
Absolutely. And the different kind of fish, they're the way you find them in the fossil record. There they are, all different kind of fish. And they just, suddenly it looked like this boom, they came into existence. And of course they couldn't do that. And
so your number one argument is the fossil record.
Yes, tremendous, absolutely tremendous.
What's a second argument that you use when you debate?
Oh, the physical constants, the existence of these physical constants. These things up there in the universe. You got them, everything put in exactly where it has to be. And they cannot move a bit, and they cannot lose any of its weight. They think the universe would be destroyed by one. Now this is brought to us by evolutionists are telling them, and these people, they just keep trying to going around about this and that and so forth and so on, and there's absolutely no possible way that these things could have been approved or by some way. They had to be created by a creator of God, or there's just absolutely no doubt about it.
The perfect orbit of the Earth and the Sun, the Moon and the Earth, the planets that you can pinpoint decades in advance where they'll be.
Yes.
This is beautiful design, correct?
Yes, and we've only described just some of this material that destroys the idea of evolution. And why is it that so much is printed in the journals by evolutionists, and relatively so much by creationists? Well, I want to explain why this is true. And I'm going to have Stephen Jay Gould. Stephen Jay Gould was the very famous evolutionist. He was an evolutionist, there's no question about it, but he was an honest evolutionist. And I have something that came from the National History Journal, that was November 1995, by Stephen Jay Gould. This is before he died. Let's see what he said. He says, many advantages occur to the victors of any dispute, military or cerebral, and chronicling rights must rank among the greatest of perks. In short, the winners write history. How would we interpret the Trojan War if our main account had been written by Pector's bard? And how would future generations view the history of evolution theory by Duane Gish and Henry Morris, our most vociferous modern creation? Corner the market for written descriptions. See what Dr. Gould is just telling us. The reason the creationists can't get in there.
They're writing the history.
Yeah, we are writing history, but they can't get in there because they are
shut out.
These journals will not allow the creationists to publish their work, and this is, I think it's very good for Dr. Gould that he admitted that the creationists simply did not get in these journals because they wouldn't let him in. And so.
Did you ever meet Stephen Jay Gould?
I wanted to meet him. I thought sometime I'd go back and I'd walk into his office and you know what, I didn't do it. He died before. That was too bad that I would. But he was honest. You see, he was an honest man here. He admitted.
Did you ever meet Carl Sagan?
Carl Sagan? No, I didn't meet. I'd like to meet him too.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah, I've sent stuff and material too. Quite a number of these evolutionists, and for example, right here in this area, I sent something very important to one of these fellows here in the newspaper, and I sent it to 4 of them. It's by a very famous, very good doctor, one who really had some very important material. I sent 4 copies of his book, and not a one of them reported any information whatsoever. They just brushed it off.
Do you have any words to encourage Christians who want to share their faith? What would you say?
Well, if we could get the evidence from our side, from the creationist side, and I think more and more are doing that, it would be a great help. We could win. There's another evolutionist. He's an atheist. I wish I had the article right before me. And he's angry at fellow evolutionists who would just will not allow the creationists to come in and say anything. Why can't we? Why shouldn't we allow our opponents to come in? And that's what he said. And he's an honest man, an atheist, and he is. Said, why shouldn't we, instead of keeping these people out, why don't we give them
Would I be able to scan these and put them on my website and make it available for the people?
I'll tell you what I'll do for you. I have a friend who lives not far from here. He's the one I had him put this to piece. This is the one I used down there in Henry Morris as his thing. Every year they have something to promote to come and to lecture. I was the second one. Naturally, the first man was the man who won the book with Henry Morris. You know who?
John Whitcomb?
Who?
Whitcomb?
Whitcomb, that's right. Well, he was the first, and I was the second.
Wow.
Using this, I had it all put together, which were all right, everything in
PowerPoint.
Yeah, and I can get copies of this produced.
Or emailed.
Yeah.
Can I just talk to the camera real quick? There's many slides here from Dr. Gish, and I'm going to work to get it on my website, fishdon'twalk.com. So people can check out Fish Don't Walk. That's my website, fishdon'twalk.com. This material is great for the people.
The title of this is The Death of Darwinism. And we can see when we look at this material and actually start that it is certainly the death. In there, which I didn't repeat first, was there's some scientists are doing they discovered that all the lights of these stars, and others went out at the same time. And I said, it's so much evolutionists were trying to keep this out. This was in one of their leading journals, and I've got it. And I got it in here, and that's so we have wonderful evidence that will. And I wished I had time to, but I could if I could get another. You beat me. I have a couple other guys. I want to get copies of this too.
Is there anything you would like to add to encourage the people?
I have to say that. Oh boy! At my age, there's so much that I want to say that I can't. Well, if I have someone to interpret for me. My wife does a lot for me. And it would be such a great help to do this. But but I can use it if I get this friend to produce copies of these, and
great.
And it's not much. It's not a lot of money to do it, but the cost would be very minimal, really. Like I said, so I get him to, and then I could nail them out, and there would be it would all be here, and a day done right. Yeah, I fiddled around in this, and there's a lot more, so much more. It's incredible. They have so much else I could have done if I had more time to do it. How much is so incredible evidence. It would, but just it'd be a great thing for you if you could get that out.
Good. You can email it for free. So that's the future.
And yeah.
Well, Dr. Gish, I'd like to thank you. And we'll be making a DVD. We'll send you a copy.
Okay.
Thank you for your years of dedicated service to the truth.
Well, thank you.
To glorify our Lord.
I wished I could do better.
Oh.
But like I said, I have to do it this way, best I can. And because this can be used as powerful evidence. When I gave it down there in where was it?
South Carolina.
South Carolina. South Carolina. They accepted. Really, it was a wonderful opportunity, and they really did enjoy the. And there actually, there's another part I could, I'll see. It would anyhow. It would. I think you could really use it. And,
okay, we'll get it on the internet.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Oh.
And thank you for hosting us today.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I wished I could have done better.
Did great.
But that's the way this old man.
You did great. Could you tell us about the Institute for Creation Research and how it can help people watching the video?
Well, they are distributing a lot of material, and they debate, and they are doing a great job that way.
Research.
And every month now they get in their journals, and so and they have some very good people on the staff. On the staff. I mean, they're really tremendous good, and boy, I wish we had. Don't we have a copy of their journal? I thought we had it.
ICR.org is a good way to find them.
Oh, okay.
Acts and facts. Yes.
Facts and facts.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Dr. Gish, I think we covered everything. We'll let you relax.
Well,
But thank you so much,
okay.
sir.
You're welcome.